Welcome back. Welcome back. Here we go. Take two. I'm going to dial in the screen. We've said hello. We said why we're here. And we said we're going to do cats, food, and worms. And now we're going to see if the technology can keep up with the blazing pace that we've started at. Okay, so that's the screen there. That's our shared screen. Hear me? Rosie, my technical operator, are you there? I presume you are. I presume you are. And guys, if you can hear me and everything's fine, please shout. Yes. Okay. We've got the okay there. So let's go for gold. Let's. You're just going to miss out on the pretty pictures, guys. Let's see if we do that. Maybe that would work. Maybe that would work. I'll put me there, and we'll go there. How about that? Rosie, does that work if we keep a little skin in the game? Let's have a look. Does that work? There you are. Yes. Okay, you can hear me. Okay, so please just say if you can hear me again, Rosie, because as soon as I go onto this screen, guys, you can see me, but I can't see you. Okay, split screen works fine. Okay, thank goodness. Thank goodness. Thank you. You learn something every day. Thank you for bearing with me. It means that I can't pick my nose as I talk to you now because you're watching my every move. Foiled again. Okay. Cat, food and worms. You know what we're talking about now. A whisker of wisdom on our feline food and their filamentous friends. It was good the first time. Okay, so let's have a look. What are we going to do? We are going to talk about worms, first of all. The first worms we're going to talk about are the roundworms, okay? And these are the roundworms, just to put it in context, these are, if you think about spaghetti, I'm going to use food analogies here most of the way through. So if you're of a delicate disposition, then put your fingers in your ears for a second. Roundworms, the closest thing you can think of is spaghetti, 3 to 6 inches long. And if you're in new money, that would be 10 to 20 centimeters long. Okay, so that's the kind of size that we're looking at. So they're not the size of your arm and they're not the size of your hair. They are about the size of spaghetti. Okay, so, and the two major ones that we start with are Toxocara cati and Toxocaris leonina. And the one you really need to watch, leonina as in lion. Toxocara cati is the one because toxocariasis is pretty nasty to peoples. It is zoonotic and it can cause problems with people, pregnant women and babies and what have you. So it is for this reason that we're really pretty hot on keeping our cats as worm free as possible, whereas with our horses we're okay if we go up to maybe 300 eggs per gram. Okay, that's the difference, because all the equine worms are not going to affect you, but some of the dog worms and some of the cat worms can. So Toxocara cati and Toxocaris leonina. Now, the life cycles, we did a year of parasitology at King's Buildings in Edinburgh. We used to walk down there every Wednesday afternoon and used to do parasitology. And part of the parasitology thing is how do they reproduce? Because when you know how they reproduce, you can use those for management of how to keep them at bay and stop them infecting your livestock or your cats or your dogs or what have you. And there are two basic life cycles, and they're in the diagram here. If I'm clever, I might be able to grab a let's go for a laser pointer. Okay, so you've got Thomas O'Malley just there, okay, and he will pass on Toxocara cati. He's got these in his gut, and they pass onto the ground into the environment. And if it's direct transmission, they sit in the ground, and then he comes along and he eats off the ground. He eats a mouse off the ground and he re-ingests them, right? Direct from the soil. Okay, that's direct, yeah, because it just goes from him to ground to him to ground to him to ground to his friends to the ground and what have you. Yeah, very simple. Direct. Indirect transmission, as the name suggests, is that there is an intermediate host. And here on this lovely, very good diagram, actually, isn't it? We've got a mouse or a rat. We've got a chicken, snails, worms, and things. All these things that a cat might eat. Worms, yes. Birds, yes. Mice, yes. Snails, no. It's more puppies department, isn't it? Really. Anyway, they eat those. And the worm very cleverly knows that if the worm hangs out and has larvae within the muscle tissue of these creatures, then that will then be reinfected into Thomas O'Malley up at the top there. Okay, and what I haven't mentioned here, because it's a little bit, it just complicates things. But basically, there is vertical transmission where mum gives it to babies through the larvae in the tissues, then migrate to the mammary tissue and into the pup, into the kittens. Clever stuff. Clever stuff. Okay. And here you see this is Mr. and Mrs. Toxocara cati. What a lovely pair they make. Okay, so there we go. Direct and indirect life cycles of roundworms. Toxocara cati, Toxocara leonina. You heard it here first. So at your first dinner party, when you get unlocked down, you can start waxing lyrical. And so yeah, we got transmission. We got this vertical transmission from queens in the milk, and this is why we pretty much assume that all kittens have some Toxocara cati in them. I'm not sure whether I agree with the logic of that, because cats are so well wormed these days. They're wormed to within an inch of their lives for their entire lives. I'm not sure whether that holds true, and because most of this work was done quite a long time ago. However, just for safety's sake, we have to assume that all kittens, and therefore all kittens, do need treatment. More of that in a bit. So common types. So we've looked at the roundworms here, okay, the spaghetti worms, if you like, and the next ones on the list are whipworms. Whipworms, Trichuris, and these guys, as you see, they're about 2 to 3 inches long, and they're wide at one end and really thin at the other. Hence, they're called whipworms, because they look like whips, like bullwhip. Okay, they have a very simple cycle. It's a direct cycle, and that's it. They're really quite simple. Roundworms are more complex. They're further up the evolutionary cycle. These guys, they just go, cat, ground, cat, ground, cat, ground, and off you go. But the roundworms tend to stay within the lumen of the gut, whereas these guys, their trick is to actually burrow into the cecum and the colon. This is the large intestine at the back of the cat. And they really can, in large numbers. If you get one or two, it doesn't really make much difference. But they actually really dig into the wall of the colon, where they get their nutrition, and then they lay eggs, and the eggs come out the back end. Okay, so their party trick is to cause damage if they're allowed to build up in any form whatsoever. So for me, and I love herbal approaches to these things, I think continual use of product against gut worms, so that you maintain really, really great gut hygiene, and also testing. We're going to talk about that in a bit, but testing is so important, because if they find whipworms, then you've got to do something about it. So prevention is better than cure. Okay, so important. So our third selection for the day is the hookworm. Now, the hookworm, I'm not going to use a food analogy. I'm going to use a biological analogy. It's like hair. Okay, they're really, really, really tiny, and so they're about the breadth of a hair, and they're about 1/8 of an inch long, which is, in new money, is about 2 or 3 millimeters long. Very, 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 very tiny. Okay, and their party trick. So they're very similar to the others, except they're so small, and therefore you can get a lot in one go. And their party trick is they can come in through the skin. Often you'll get them coming in through the skin here, and they can cause irritation with the cat here where they come in. You can get a dermatitis there, but then they can come. They will then migrate to the gut, where they can then shed worms. The common ones that you would Google are Ancylostoma and Uncineria. That's how you pronounce that guy, Uncineria. And I'm not going to bore you with the genus name, because that's detail that you probably don't need. Ancylostoma and Uncineria. You don't want to get them. Therefore, prevention's better than cure. But now you know kind of what they look like, what sort of size they are, and again, let's just not let them in the first place. Keeping cats clean, and maintaining great enteric hygiene all the time, and I like herbs for that. Okay, the last, we're going back to our herbs. These are the tapeworms. So if you think tagliatelle, or if you think a string of rice, not that you get strings of rice in most kitchens, but if you get a string of rice, then that would be those. So Dipylidium caninum is the rice. It looks like a tiny little bit of rice, tiny little bit of rice, tiny little bit of rice. Okay, that's Dipylidium, and these are the guys who are associated with fleas. So if cat has fleas, fleas will munch on the eggs, will ingest the eggs. The cat then grabs the fleas when they're grooming themselves. Clever. The egg then enters the cat. When the flea is digested, the egg then proliferates within the gut, and you have a Dipylidium infection, and that's how that one works. The other really famous one is the Taenia, and this is where they get them from rats and mice, and they're much longer. Okay, they can be a foot long, which is 35 centimeters long, if you like, in new money. And these are they don't do much harm unless they're in significant numbers, but you don't really want them. Therefore, prevention is by far the best means possible. You can't always find them when you do a worm count, though. Think about tapeworms, because you see, if you look at these segments, they only shed them intermittently. Yeah, so they may shed them on a Monday and a Wednesday and a Friday. And so if you do your test on a Tuesday or a Thursday, you can't find them. So if you don't find tapeworms, you can't say that you haven't got tapeworms. But if you do find them, and you're doing fecal egg counts, your fecal egg count company will tell you. My practice, we use wormcount.com, but there is FEC Lab and there is Westgate Laboratories. I'm going to put a reference to those a wee bit later on. So there you go. We got the spaghetti, we got the tiny little whips, we got the hair like hookworms, which go in through your skin, often through your toes if you're a cat. And then you've got the tagliatelle, which is either Dipylidium or the Taenia tapeworms. That's kind of why they're called tapes, because they're like tapes. Surprise, surprise. Okay, so worming. So what do we do with worming? Worming, because we pretty much assume that all kittens have got our Toxocara, then worming kittens 2 or 3 times before they're 8 weeks of age is considered a good idea. Often we'll worm just before the queen kittens. Okay, with adult cats, prevention's better than cure. I like herbs, and so I'd go down that line, and I would use the wormcount.com fecal egg screening to make sure that I'm on top of everything. But I would stick to herbs as much as possible, and we would be doing this with the Verm-X product, for example. They offer a crunchy, which you'll see it in the corner of most of the slides that we're doing today. A crunchy, and you just give that every single day. So it's a small amount of herb every single day. They're crunchy things. Cats like them, and that's what we do with our cat. Actually, he's a hunter, and so we're pretty generous with the old things. And many thanks to Verm-X, without whom we could not do this stuff. They support me so that I can help you. Tapeworms, as I say, they take quite a long time to establish, and until you see quite a lot of them, when you have quite a lot of tapeworms, you'll see a dog who's just kind of a cat who's just ill and not doing very well, can't put weight on, maybe a bit of diarrhea and digestion's not so good, and if in doubt, then one does have to worm. If The licensed products, there is things like the Dronsits for tapeworm, and you can use those. I like to try and use, and very successfully in many cases, have used the Verm-X products and diatomaceous earth, either together or alternating those when we've got a worm burden that we're trying to get rid of. That's my practice. That's my experience of these things, and that's often very successful. And as we say, with treating adult cats, you just keep going. If you're using a herbal product, then that would be on a daily basis. And if you're using the a pharmaceutical product, you would use it, according to the manufacturer's instruction. Worming queens, what they classically do is worming before mating and then just before kidneying, and then you do 2 or 3 treatments before about 8 weeks of age. So it's quite similar to pups, and that's just the safe way to do it. Okay, what are the alternatives here? This is, by the way, this is the product that we use at home for Ziggy. Yeah, that's what he gets, and he's a hunter. He's bringing in birds and rats and mice and things all the time. So for worm egg counting, as we've discussed, we're looking for eggs in the stool. Can't see the tapeworms. If you want the best results is to send in 3 consecutive days, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, not just Monday, because you're more likely to get a very good appraisal of exactly what's happening, and you're more likely to see tapes if they're there. If you do, you only need a tiny bit, like a hazelnut-sized bit of poo, dunk, 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 and you're off. As it says, one of the major problems is that cats are secretive. Dogs, dead easy. You walk behind them, you pick up the poo anyway, and so off you go. Cats, if they are going out into the woods behind your house and you never see them poo, you're going to have to keep them in until they do, okay? Which is pretty distressing on all parties, really. But that's what you have to do. Or you've got to use pharmaceutical the whole time, which is a shame. By the way, the slightly pixelated picture here, this is what they look at. So what they'll do is they'll take the stool sample, and they will take the stool sample. They'll dilute it in zinc sulfate from memory. I haven't thought about that for many years. Zinc sulfate, and it allows the eggs to float to the top. You then put a slide on the top, and the eggs just kind of stick to the top, and you can look. Or there's another method where you put them between 2 slides which are very close together, and it just goes in, and you're able to look down through, and you can see, this is what you see, literally what you see in the microscope. You see bits of food and stuff and a bit of mud or something, but then you can see these worm eggs. You see, worm eggs, worm eggs, worm eggs. So interesting stuff. We have a great time at vet school. These are the labs that are available, and they're all very, very good. WormCout is what we use at the practice, but we've got Feck Lab and we've got Westgate Labs. Great stuff. They're all good people. Herbal products. Oh, you can see me now. I thought you weren't able to see me. So there you go. This is the. Hopefully you can see that. That's the Verm-X product that we use with Ziggy. There you go. And we'd be using that long term, and I found it to be very, very safe and a really lovely product to use. Okay, let's talk about feeding cats. Let's just check the time while we're here. Whoa, way over time. Oh well. Feeding cats. Now, we don't talk about feeding cats enough, and why is that? It's because for every raw feeding cat, there are probably 30 or 40 raw feeding dogs, and that's just the way things have evolved. And I think a lot of that is to do with cats are quite fussy. Once they're like crack addicts. Once they get addicted to what they're weaned onto as kittens, they will then not want to explore any other food options. Okay, many of them. Some of them do. When I'm converting cats over onto raw, I find about 30% will just go straight onto raw. They've got this instinct. They think fantastic, it's raw food, off we go. 30% will go, but will take a week or two. They're slightly reluctant. And 30% you'll be working and you know, after 3, 6, 9, 12 months, you will probably get through with some of those. But there's probably 10% of the entire population who will just go, nope, I would rather starve than not have my Hills, my Royal Canin, my Purina, whatever it is. So there you go. That's I think why we talk a lot more about feeding dogs than cats. Cats. We talk about cats being carnivores. They're not. They're mousivores. They're mousivores. They're rativores. They're spiderivores. They are rabbitivores, and essentially they eat more or less the whole thing. They might leave a little bit of intestine. They might leave a little bit of liver, a little bit of gallbladder for you to stand on in the morning when you come down to make your cup of tea. Lovely. But apart from that, they eat the lot. They eat the eyes, the ears, the nose. Look at those little claws. They eat the lot. Yeah. And so that's where they get their nutrition from. Dogs eat horse poo and sheep poo and berries and whatever they can get their hands on. But cats are really in a kind of wild, you know, from an evolutionary point of view, they eat one thing. That's it. Cats, for example, don't eat other cats' poo. They don't eat their own poo, as dogs are more than happy to do on many an occasion. Cats don't scavenge. They don't. They might go for your bins if you've got, you know, juicy chicken, roast chicken or something in there, but essentially they're not real scavengers in the true sense of the word, and so they're very, very different. And we need to make their diet as evolutionarily appropriate and as close to a mouse or a bird or a rabbit as possible. So let's have a look at that. This is a concept, a way of thinking about it that I developed over the last few years. And if you just think of your hand, we can draw the feeding of a cat on your hand. There are 5 ingredients and 1 concept. It's as simple as that. 5 ingredients, 1 concept. I'll go through briefly now. So we've got the meat component. This is the flesh. When you're buying it at the supermarket, it will be the flesh. In the raw, it will be the flesh and the skin and sinews and things like that. The next component obviously is the bone, because every mouse, every rabbit, every bird has bone, a constituent. Within the meat, if we go back a tiny, we would also include meat would be all the soft material, and so that would be the heart and the lungs and the liver and the kidneys and things like that. Okay, so within meat, it's all the juicy stuff. And then we've got the bone and the veg. With dogs, we're going 10 to 20% or so with vegetable material, but with cats, we're bringing that right down 3 to 5%. Yeah, because in the average mouse, there's only a tiny little bit of non-animal material, and they don't eat any other vegetable material. So we often do add mins and vits, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to emulate Mrs. Mouse. I'm trying to remember what Mrs. Mouse in Beatrix Potter was called. Mrs. Tiddlywinks, was it? Yeah. So NHS, nuts, herbs and seeds, and we would make up tiny little portions of greens, maybe a berry or 2, a bit of nuts, herbs and seeds. So very similar to the dog, and you can use the dogs. If you've got a dog, you can just take tiny amounts and put them into ice cubes, and that you can use those to just put a little bit of vegetable goodness in with the cat's food. With oils, when we're feeding our dogs, the oils are quite easy. We use flax and then fish and then flax and then fish, alternating monthly. But cats, because they are obligate carnivores, can't use flax oil. They can't transform it into a usable format. So we have to. I would suggest we use we'd use salmon oil, then perhaps pollock oil, and then perhaps krill oil, maybe sardine oil, and we'd just have a rotation. Each month we would use a different oil. So all in all, quite similar to dogs. If you want to think about it, all you do is just sliding the veggie component from about 10-20% to about 3-5%, and you're just filling in the rest with all the stuff that you've got there, feeding your dog. Yeah, so it's quite a simple thing. So the concept, hey, pyrotechnics. Do you like that? Variety. It's a very varietous delivery of variety. It's really, 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 really important. It's such a key part of feeding raw food. Massive. It's really, really important for dogs. It's easy for dogs because they tend to like variety. Cats can be quite conservative, but if you can get at least 3 proteins for the cat, then that's a really good idea. So proportions, 80-10-10. The meat, bone and organ side of the cat's dinner is about 80-10-10. And as I said, we've got about 3-5% veg, a few berries, NHS, nuts, herbs and seeds, and some fish oil going in there, and our friend variety. So thanks again to Verm-X for making this all very possible. Let me come back to you guys, he says optimistically. Where are you? There you are. Let's get rid of the thingy there and say hello. Good. Oh, Mrs. What the first thing I see, Mrs. Tiggywinkle. She was a hedgehog. Hannah, you've out Beatrix pottered me. So therefore, guys, who was the mouse? There was a little town mouse. No, not Tiggywinkle. Hannah Bruin. You can't remember either. Okay, we're as bad as each other. That makes me feel a little bit better. Good. So anybody got any questions, guys? Can't get Verm-X in Oz. Email Verm-X and see what arrangements they've got in Oz. If they haven't got any, they haven't got any. But you never know. Let them know. It's lovely to have some Australian input. Any questions? I'll just go back a wee bit. Do. Yes, we can hear you. Yeah, sorry about that. This is not on topic, Liz Goodall, but when my first farming job, the boss was Liz Godsall, and so because of that, I'll answer this one. One of my cats gets mites every year at this time till the autumn. Diatomaceous doesn't work. What can I use, please? Well, the licensed products are, the advocates advantages of this world. I have to say that because I'm a veterinary surgeon. But my favoured product would be something like Cedar-Side. For that, it's a spray that you use. Okay, so there you go. Give that a go. Michelle Trott says, what continuous herbal products? I think the Verm-X, actually. That's what we use on our cat. Can you see that? Let me put that up to the light. It's a bit bright this evening. Verm-X. Crunchies. We give him those every day. He thinks it's his birthday every day. Really, really good. Sorry, Josephine. Blurred your end. Please apologise. Michelle, pleasure. Martina says, Martina Gorgan. I probably pronounced that wrong. I apologise, Martina. Is Verm-X safe for kidney disease issues? Yeah, it doesn't contain. It's not high phos, or there's nothing in there that's going to If you've got an older cat, perhaps with renal problems, then absolutely fine. Elaine Clark says she sends 3 days worth of samples for worm egg counts. That's great. Yeah, that works really, really well. And Penny says, after 6 years, I still can't feed my cats full raw. They get tiny doses of raw every few days. Penny, I think that's fantastic. Well done you for persisting. That's really, really good. And that just proves they are the 10% who say, I'd rather McDonald's for the rest of my life. Okay. I forgot to say a little feed prey, whole prey. Good. I think we've done pretty well this evening, guys. Okay, final one. Angela Ferguson says, are there any symptoms of worm infestation besides the obvious? No. I mean, unless you're really going to go to town and you're talking about cysts in the muscle tissue and things like that. But generally speaking, if you suspect worms, send a stool sample off sooner rather than later, and you're looking for losing weight, not too bad in themselves, maybe just digestion not quite as good as it used to be, slow change. Usually you'll see them if they're that bad. You'll see even roundworms coming out the back end. In which case you've got quite a big infestation. I like using herbal products in that scenario because, especially in horses, for example, if you've got a horse who's got a really high worm burden and you use a chemical, it can kind of wipe out all the worms. It's very effective. It wipes out all the worms all in one go, and you can have this massive stripping effect with the gut, and you can get a real pouring of proteinaceous material, serum and what have you, and bloody material into the gut, and that can really cause problems. So if we're using a herbal product, for example, we can do the same job but just more gently over a longer period, and therefore have an attrition effect rather than everybody killed all in one go. So that's quite useful if you're using somebody who's got a significant burden. Okay, guys, that's your lot. I've even got next time's presentation. So Thursday the 20th of May, we are going to do how do I help my old dog naturally without dogs? How do I help my old dog naturally without drugs? So it's going to be about we're going to be talking about arthritis, we're going to be talking about energy, we're going to be talking about cognitive decline and all those kind of things. How can we help those using herbs and supplements and all that good stuff? So join us. We're going to be here Thursday the 20th of May. May already, I can't believe it. Thursday the 20th of May for The Gut Doctor. I hope this has been useful. If you have any queries, get in touch with our friends at Verm-X, Verm-X. They will look after you. Say hello to Cheryl. She's there and she will answer the phone and look after you very, very well, I'm sure. And there we go. That's it. We got there in the end. We're a little bit late, but it's been fun. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you bearing with me. And I hope you have a great month and enjoy the further lockdowns. I'm going to say good night for now. And thanks for being with us this evening.